Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I asked Superintendent Casavant to come and talk about the fiscal 2020 Narragansett District's budget. I'd like them to have as many different venues and opportunities to cover this, because it's going to be a hot topic. It's important, and there are increases over last year. Some is due to the state, and some is from a service standpoint from the district, providing a service to the town. So I asked him to come here and give him an opportunity to talk to this again. I know most of us were at the last meeting, but again, the more opportunities and different venues, I think, for the people to hear this is much better. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Casavant.
Well, thank you, and I do appreciate the time, especially this time of the year. This group is pretty busy, it's absolutely right. The more times that we can talk about the budget, the more time we get, the more we get the information out there is great. But I have to say, the feedback that we receive is equally as good. We've done this a lot earlier than we normally have in the past. That was, as I said in the joint meeting, that was very different for me to come from a perspective of not knowing any of the monies that would be available from the state, and just really focusing on debt, really, because you're really then starting from what you need, and this number is gigantic and with nothing to offset. So I do appreciate the opportunity. Again, many of you were at the meeting, so I certainly will just speak to the numbers. Given the fact that the district vision and those things are, of course, what drive us. But what we're really talking about here is, where we're at right now, and what we'll be preparing for in terms of FY20. I think that one of the important things to really highlight is that our enrollment. Now, I'm talking about enrollment, not the foundation enrollment, in which Chapter 70 is driven. Is stayed fairly consistent. We hover around 1436, 1438, 1434 month to month, and that's a nice stable number for us to be at here in the district. It also shows that folks are not leaving or coming in droves, and why that's important, obviously, is we have space issues. Given until the new building is actually up and running, so we've done a nice job with that, and partially because people definitely want their kids to go to school here. We have no more room at the inn. I made that very well known in terms of school choice, which drives us, and a lot of what we focus on in terms of students, in terms of what is our enrollment, say day-to-day enrollment, a lot is driven by school choice. And again, if you look on page 5, and I know that folks don't have the PowerPoint in front of them when they watch on TV, but we have really since about 2015, truthfully, we have really seen a steady increase in our school choice enrollment, to the point that we're at least right now preliminarily with 243 kids that are school choicing in and 134 kids school choicing out, which is a differential of about 109 students. That's the best or the highest differential that we've seen. I think I didn't go past 2014, maybe back in the 90s. I'm not sure, but certainly in the recent past. What does that equate in terms of money, which is important, is you're talking about a differential of $704,000. So when you factor in what you receive in school choice at the end of the year, mind you, and what you will then pay out in school choice out, this is on page 5, But, what we see is, a net gain of $704,000. That's fantastic. We're starting to see us come to the crest, though. That is just not going to keep getting larger and larger and larger, simply because we don't have infinite room. There are only so many seats. When parents school choice their children, they want to do so at the elementary levels. So in order to gain, for kids to get acclimated with their groups. So when you're full at the elementary level, you start seeing some of these numbers starting to kind of top out, so to speak. So I want to make sure that I express that in terms of the driver. So we know that in terms of monies, in terms of what we in fact can affect in terms of monies coming into the district, school choice is one of them. School choice, when you speak of to any family, they're not going to school choice their child into a district that they don't feel comfortable with. They're not educating their student, or their child, and it's not a safe and secure environment. Well, we know that we are a place of desired educational input, because we have quite a few kids who now still want to school choice here. We have a list of 20 kids who have already signed up online. We haven't even opened school choice. So we know that that we do a good job. That's truly to the benefit of the teachers and the staff of all the schools. So why so much? We talked about a $1.1 million difference, right? In terms of what we project to receive from state funds and what the town's obligation, et cetera. Quite honestly, the largest portion is the fact that we're opening a new building. And the costs associated with that in terms of either maintenance and staffing that will require to open the building. But I think that I want to take a step back. For those of you who remember the meetings last year when we talked about the reorganization, if those of you went through that process with us, we quickly identified that there were going to be positions that needed to be filled simply because of the reorganization. We knew the positions generally were going to be maintenance-oriented, cafeteria-oriented at the new school, but the positions, the openings were probably going to come where folks were, of course, taken in order to fill the needs of the new elementary school, and that was Phillipston. We knew that there were going to be created openings or needs at that elementary when we reconfigured. We weren't sure, though, quite frankly, what those positions were going to be, because in the end, you have to figure out who's still here and what's going on. So in the end, if you look on page 8 of the staff, these priority staffing needs, we took a great amount of time to make sure that we identified what those needs are and to reassign folks who currently are in the district in order to mitigate any type of potential cost. But where we couldn't do that, it does become a cost to the district, okay, or a cost to the towns. The costs associated with reorganization, quite frankly, overall, is that's on the previous page 7, the way the slides were set up, but you're looking at a total cost to the district of $441,000. And much of that, of course, is in salary. 200,000 of it, roughly, we're projecting to be utility costs for the new Templeton Center is projected by, projected not only by us, but also by the SMMA, which are the architectural firm that is building the new building, and they run models to see what that would cost. But they're very clear to say that they had a 30% contingency in order to kind of cover their bet, so to speak. And they didn't add water, which was kind of odd to us, because that's a utility, but that's something that they didn't get into. So we added that for us. I don't want to ramble too much, because I've been known to do that. I get it. I want to make sure that I answer the direct questions that you have, as the group, because you were part of the initial. Many of you were part of the initial presentation and heard the whole soup to nuts stories about, or at least the explanations about why the positions and what we were moving towards. So I would, again, I can gladly and easily keep going, but I certainly want to answer any direct questions.
Does anyone have any?
So this might be a dumb question. I try not to ask those. Since you're a school within the town, why do you have to pay water?
It is not unusual, well, well, here's a couple, okay, so we're not talking about the regional, we're talking about the
Yeah.
elementary. It's a service, I have to tell you, as the business manager in the previous district, we paid water and sewer. It was a cost that was not, that was not assumed by the town. It's a cost that it would fall on the town, right? So in essence, it does make a loop, so there's no doubt. So the water company charges us, we factored into our budget, and of course, our budget, is spread over a couple of different ways of paying it. I don't have a direct answer. I think much of it has to probably do with the accountability of, if the school is going to cost, $15,000 in water and sewer, that they can't necessarily, eat it, so to speak, so you have to bill it in kind, and, yeah, I understand your question, but
It's, the way I look at it is, there's however many water customers, 1,400, 1,700, somewhere around there, less than 2,000, I believe. But like he says, if the town it's a town building, you put the water in this, that water gets processed and there's a cost involved, and that would get tossed on the small number of ratepayers versus
Okay.
getting pushed on, spread over for the tax. It's like this building, we pay electrical costs, and it's a town electric
Okay.
department. And it's like you're paying yourself, but you have the generation, in a way, it's smart from a business standpoint. If you had a restaurant, you go in there and you just eat breakfast all the time, and you don't pay for it,
Okay.
somebody's gonna cover those costs. It kinda doesn't make sense, cause it does go in a circle, we pay for it either way, but
everywhere I've been, we've been billed for, of course, water, electricity, all of our, even from the city departments. So it's been, yeah.
Should be in that cost. Okay.
Chris, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at page 9, your FY '20 operational budget drivers,
Yes.
and it seems like there's some, I know that we had talked about the rise in transportation cost within the past couple of weeks. Certainly, this board has talked about it. But it is surprising to see so many other significant increases. Do you think, is it your opinion that this is bad timing?
No, I have to say that when I look at that list, so salaries, was a 1%.
Yeah, I'm not even looking at that.
Sure, but,
Yeah.
benefits.
Benefits,
Gotta
which
tell you.
goes with what you were saying earlier about the reorganization.
Well, yeah, but we actually were pleasantly surprised, I hate to say. Sometimes we're told to budget for 15, 20% increase. That's what we're told initially. You're like, oh my God, a 15, 20% increase.
Right.
In these type of costs, and they make you feel better by, only increasing them by, what is it, or 10%, and you're supposed to feel good about that. That's, when I say it's standard, that had little to do with the fact of the reorganization. Now, more employees obviously potentially generate more costs to health insurance, et cetera. But the cost that we saw, at least initially, didn't indicate any. I'm more concerned with student services. When we start talking about transportation,
Right.
especially special education transportation, sometimes that transportation cost is almost as much as the actual, service that's being provided.
Yeah.
Those are the type of things that we watch very, very carefully. Those that can really sneak up on you because you can't budget for that. If a special needs student were to move into the district midway through the year, I use this example, but it happens, and is on an IEP and is being transported to a certain place, that's a cost that we have to at least initially incur, and there's no way to budget for that. There's no way to know that.
Yeah.
We would never park money, meaning to prepare for that, because that certainly wouldn't.
Right. Are you reimbursed? I forget the title that for special education.
Right, so it's circuit breaker.
Circuit breaker.
And circuit breaker is only for the actual facility over, a certain threshold. I don't believe that the transportation is covered by circuit breaker.
No, that would have been my question. to
Yeah,
try and-
it isn't. What can sometimes be recouped is that if we have a special needs student, and through the same process, you know, it's funny, when school choice, everyone knows the infamous $5,000 per child either coming or going. Well, but through circuit breaker and through the way we report out, if we have a student that is school choice in from another district and is receiving X service, there is additional monies that is charged back to that district. It's not always a gigantic amount, but it definitely will exceed the $5,000. So in terms of transportation, I believe, and I'd have to double check this with Dr. Salavatos. I don't believe the entire cost, but some of that can be charged back to the sending district. But again, if he was school choice, then he'd be outplaced. It becomes a whole other, conversation, actually.
Do the special education instructors, teachers also get is that paid within the same line item?
Yeah, so they're under the teacher, the teacher line.
Circuit breaker is what pays?
No,
Okay.
no, through our budget.
Oh, okay.
Is how we'll pay the teachers, but.
They're funded positions. They're
They
not-
are, they are.
Okay.
And again, the positions that we're advocating for, they have been identified because of a need that we have, a lot of districts have, in terms of improving our social, emotional, well-being within the schools in terms of testing. And we want to keep kids here in the district, and the way to do that is through programming and making sure that, we have the folks available to us to work with kids who may have, a variety of different of issues. And, there are kids regardless, right? They're kids from our district, and we want to keep them here in district. Yes, there's a cost savings to that, but there's also a piece that there are kids, and we don't want them disenfranchised, by being sent, to another program just because. If it has to happen, it will, if that's the best interest of the child, of course. But if we can make some adjustments on our end, that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
And I highlighted that on page 9 by why the positions are needed, why we're asking for those.
So what's the figure that we're at right now? Are we still 2 point something, or are we at 1 point?
So the budget shortfall at this point is $1,016,354.
Okay.
You may have seen, we provided, I think,
Yeah,
a
the
total of
different-
6 different
Correct.
scenarios in terms of keeping everything in school choice, everything
Yeah,
out
from
school
like
choice.
800K all the way to 2 point whatever.
Absolutely. We
Yeah.
tried to give as many, variations, to the same issue, so to speak. What I spoke about, at the last meeting was the fact that we do have to be careful about putting those reoccurring costs through school choice. Because again, if those numbers don't stay as healthy as they are, those costs don't go away just because the school choice monies start to, say, wane. And that's where you can get upside down, as they say, very, very quickly. So we watch that very closely, very, very closely, and try to keep as many of those out as we can. But it's not possible to take out every one of those if our entire insurance was coming out of school choice. I mean, it's an $800,000 bill. If I took it out, my gosh, it'd even go higher, right? So we realized that we have to do that in dribs and drabs. Be safe about that. I think that one of the other things I would say is that, and I know that there was a slide about basically what of district-based revenue. And I, basically asked permission, if you remember, I asked permission to say, look, I understand that it's not revenue. Like, we don't, we teach children, that's our job. And we don't sell them on the open market after that to get the best price. So we're not the business, but it is a business in the sense of money and what we can do. When I first arrived here and I did my survey of, it was quite clear that folks felt that the school department was a place that people just kind of said, hey, we need, so your job is to give us. And so again, I asked permission to talk about revenue, but in the form of school choice, Medicaid, which is really, something that we've really honed a very good skill, and of course, grants, competitive grants. So on page 12, in FY 15, in terms, if you allow me to use the loose term, and I should probably put in quotes revenue, but, the district was earning, so to speak, $170,000 in those three areas. We project to probably take in about $1.2 million this year from those sources. And so I think that I caught myself, because what I wanted to make sure that folks know is that when we ask for a school psychologist, there are a lot of great reasons for school psychologists. We need them, but they're also reimbursable. So when they're doing the work of a school psychologist, it's, $45 every 15 minutes or whatever the rate is, that's money that's going to come back into this district. So when folks were saying, well, why are you not spending your E&D? Why is this E&D number going up so much? You're not spending the money we're giving you. That wasn't the case at all. By the time that money would be released to us was in June. And so, and there's a chart that you could see that we were literally, we started at $100,000 and we're up to $300,000 in terms of monies that we're gaining through Medicaid.
Right.
Well, that dumps right into E&D if you do not offset that with cost. And so we are going to offset some of these costs, and it's in the breakdown. So we're working very hard to be a good partner, because it's important. By the way, it's important for us to do that. If we can earn this money, so to speak, this revenue, then we need to put it back into the positions that we need. I'm sorry, Jeff.
Could you talk on could you just touch on the Medicaid thing a little bit as far as how that benefits you? 'Cause,
Sure.
Again, I think that's one of those important things. That,
Yeah.
I don't want people to misunderstand.
Sure.
Your approach.
Yeah, so what happens is that although the rules are going to change here July 1, so what I speak of now will change a bit July 1. But many services that are provided to students whom are, at least right now in this year, that are Medicaid eligible, right? They are receiving, they're on an IEP, for example, or a 504. If the parent allows us to bill for the services that are billable, speech and language, OT, PT, some counseling, et cetera. It does not bill the family. It allows us to bill Medicaid for the services being provided. Then if they give us permission to do that, then we do. And again, you do not get a dollar for dollar. The state sets the percentage it will give to reimburse you, whether it be 72 or 74, whatever the case is. But the fact is that you almost, even by luck, will generate some amount of money. Well, what we've done over the last 3 years is said, okay, if I have X amount of kids on an IEP receiving services, special needs services, then we know of those kids, X percentage are eligible for Medicaid, maybe Mass Health, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have actively, gone and made phone calls and gone to meetings and met with parents, explained the situation, said, look, this is what we'd like to do. It benefits the district. It allow us to also help offset more services for kids in general. And by doing that, I mean, again, I'm,
Is that well received by the parents?
Yes.
Okay.
Once you've explained, quite frankly, this is something that's going to affect them, their name as parents don't even become, a matter of record. It's really just about, they'll verify through the child.
Yeah.
And meaning through Medicaid. And so what we found, quite frankly, we don't have a lot of students on IEPs, but many of them happen to be Medicaid eligible. And so when we started this process about just talking to parents about why, you can see the monies on page 12 start to increase exponentially.
Yeah.
The things what we've done this year though is that, okay, because it's you don't really know the number until June. Like, you really don't know, so you gotta be careful, because you might end up spending more money than you're going to receive. And we're very fiscally conservative folks, just by general. So we know that, we're projected somewhere in the area to an estimate of $400,000 for FY19. Well, folks, much of that is going to slide right into E&D eventually, once we know what that number is, but we've allocated, how much, 30?
260 for next year.
$260,000 to offset or to literally just pay, or to basically offset the cost of these staff members whom we need, but also are Medicaid reimbursable eligible, right? So it makes sense, if you were to have a guidance counselor, which are fantastic, or someone like a BCBA, which is a board certified behavioral analysis, or a school psychologist, you're going to get literally more bang for your buck in terms of with say the school psychologist, because much of what they'll do is being reimbursable, which will help provide more services. So trying to be smarter about the way we do that, but actually really hustling after and really talking to parents about how they can benefit the district and their children by allowing us to bill for them. So that's a big deal. It really is. I mean, you can see from 2013 to, budgeted income, but what we actually received. I mean, in FY13, we received $147,000. FY19 was projected to $400,000. Now, I'm not saying that there was $400,000 of eligibility back in FY13. Much of this, folks, is the fact that, we have kids who are in need on the social emotional level, on, through special education, learning disabilities, et cetera. So the students that we do receive at times are complex, and have been identified by Medicaid a while ago, probably.
So this helps a little bit to take a little of the pressure, so to speak, off of the local tax base.
It does.
I mean, it's, it's relevant, but.
Absolutely, and I can show that by, if you look on the page for E&D balance and usage. So on page 11, now, when these numbers started to skyrocket a little bit, meaning that they started to, we're looking at a 635 for FY18 and expended, you see this, or so by the E&D balance, since I've been here anyway, has literally gone to help balance the budget, right? To help fill the shortfall. So it's just a number that, with maybe, with the exception of $50,000 here or $25,000 there for, contingencies or wherever we put it, has gone to help balance the budget. So it really has helped. Because that's a number that we just plug in and go, well, for example, it was expended, for example, $336,000 in FY17, absolutely was used to help, to fill the void between what we could receive and what we needed. So it does. It absolutely does. I think of. So what you're going to hear from me probably, or see and hear, is that we are going to do quite a bit. So we're going to have what I'll call as superintendent coffees or meetings. Where they both will be some in the morning and some at night, depending on people's schedules, just to talk about the budget or to talk about any questions. We're going to go. We're going to actually do a few videos as well, and put them up on our webpage, which, I have a face for radio, so we'll see how that goes. But in order to explain, certain aspects of the budget, certainly not do a whole dissertation on the entire budget all at once, because at that point, you could just sit there for and go, oh my God. But, very quick, I don't say snippets, but 20 to 25 minutes of just a very focused, point. It might be, I just said school choice. It might be this or that, or why do we need X amount of
Startup cost.
exactly
For the school.
right,
I mean,
exactly. So where does $400,000
wanna
come from
understand
to
that.
open up a building? And well, here it is, and this is and talk about that exactly. That's a great place to start and where we probably will start.
I think so, yeah.
Absolutely. It makes sense to start. Who cares about school choice? Monies are, I need to know why this building is costing me so much money. And so that makes all the sense in the world. Exactly.
I think that's gonna be the hurdle. I think a lot of your other fluctuations, I think you can explain those and, whether people understand or not. But someone listening to it at town meeting is gonna understand those or take those in stride. I think it's gonna be the things that are the outliers. And I, a little bit, it's a blessing in disguise. The startup costs for the new school, if those are major drivers for, the one point.
Right.
1.6.
1 point, yeah, but $1 million, to round, but.
And if that's what we wind up having to explain, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Everyone understood it was that it was expensive. It
Right.
was emotionally expensive for this community to get the school. This is just another part of that. The pain's not over yet.
Right.
I think some people are gonna ask, why wasn't that part of the school override? It's gonna be asked.
I have to tell you that we were just talking about this. The MSBA puts on a program called To Build a Building, or Build a New Building. I forgot exactly what the name is. And you go and you listen, and they basically tell you all the wonderful and things and the pitfalls sometimes of building a new building. Now again, I'm coming from the business manager frame, so it's hard for me to understand. But the number one thing that they'll say that just like floors communities is that the building gets built, they understand there's a cost to build things, but there's this additional cost is that once you actually have it built. And many, many, many communities have like, what are you talking about? How can this cost us more? And I have to tell you that it would make sense to me that when you are going through the PFA, right? So you're going to borrow the money, and you're trying to get that all settled, and it's not easy in any community to do that. That many of us have said, well, why not just project?
Right.
A cost, because the money, we're under budget for this building, right? So in other words, it's if you do project it, if you spend it and you have to, okay, but if you don't, then you don't have to borrow it, so to speak, or unless you folks want to. Why isn't that added in? And I don't think that people feel. I guess people don't feel comfortable putting those costs up front so early. Again, Templeton aside, it was a long process, but a building project start to finish takes about five years, depending, right? 5 to 6 years. Well, 5 years ago, if you were to project what the cost would be, especially around utilities, I don't think anyone would feel comfortable doing that. I think the MSBA wants nothing to do with that. I truly do. They don't want to get into that business. So I don't know if that answers, but you're right. I don't know the answer to that. In terms of from the MSBA or but I think in Templeton's case, it was so protracted, I think that folks, it was a very long time getting here.
Because the original estimate was 34 million.
Yeah.
And they did the feasibility when they voted on that, and they ended up authorizing up to 47 million.
Right.
And I think in there is some funding for equipment, cleaning type janitorial stuff, but not the personnel and everything. And it just never became part of the.
That's right.
Because everybody concentrates on just getting the building
That's it.
funded and built, and then it's like, you build a new house, you get the mortgage for the house, and then you go, now we need new furniture, and it's like,
Yep.
you don't always,
Exactly.
because the upfront cost, you look at that and go,
Wow.
60 mil, what the hell?
Yep.
So you.
And it's true. It's a turnkey. It's a turnkey operation. So when it's done, from the grass to into the building at every level. And if anything's wrong, they pay for, they fix it or whatever. It's an absolute turnkey operation. To your point, but what do you need? It really boils down to the resources that you have currently and what you can then move into, say, this building in order to offset costs. And that was probably one of our, and I'm looking on page 8 again, but when we figured out where these holes were, right? We didn't know that until ultimately you know what you have for staff. It boils down to that, and you we knew that, of course, in August, September. We were working on this that early because we knew we had to get the budget. And that's what, in terms of taking your staff, filling a hole that you currently have, so you're not, of course, spending more money than you need to. But you're right, because there's always going to be need, especially in this district, because of the way we were sharing so many of these staff. Once you get a building of 600 some odd kids, folks, you can no longer share a guidance counselor between Templeton Center and Phillipston. You have 600 kids that you're with between two. It's just not going to be feasible. For example, that's just one example.
I think that's a line of effort in terms of describing the conditions to get people to understand. I mean, the zeros and ones of it, I think that there's going to be plenty of data to be able to support that and understand it.
Yep.
I think it's really, how do you swallow that pill? How did you get there? What is it gonna mean for 21 and 22? Is there good news in 21 and 22? And really approach 20 from that perspective.
The building has to
That's
open.
my feeling.
And I think that, the building has to open, right? We
Correct.
know, of course, you don't spend all this money or
Sure.
going to spend this money to go, maybe we'll just let it sit there for a year. My gosh, I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost foolish. So you have to open the building. We know this. And the building will open, and we know that it will. What it takes to run it, and again, I think every district is very different, depending on how they're set up. We knew last year when we talked about this, there were going to be needs, staffing needs, never mind all the other stuff. We knew this because we could no longer share as much as we were sharing. And we talked about that. It was a hard conversation for those who sat through them between the two towns, and we got through it, and I thought it was a healthy conversation. I learned a lot in terms of the history, of the district that I had not known prior, but that is truly we vetted that out last year, but here we are. So we've done our best. We're always looking for, again, the conversations are great because someone says to me, well, what about this or what about that? That's good. Let's talk.
Right.
It's not.
It's like tonight, maybe we get ideas, maybe
That's
that
it.
you wind up going through some things.
All the time, absolutely.
Right,
Yeah.
a different approach.
And I think even from when we started, the town started with the feasibility study till even just 15, I believe a lot, the MSBA's funding, reimbursements, how they approach things, their rules and guides have changed. As how they pay their reimbursements, I think, kind of upfront.
Yep.
Cut down on I mean, they've evolved from the time that we got the
Sure.
process going till.
Well, there was a moratorium for quite some time, and it's about 14, 15. They stopped for a while because they had to figure out their funding source, and that was the whole penny, on the gas tax, the whole thing, and they had to figure that. They stopped for a while because they had to figure out all of that because towns were like, wait a minute, this upfront cost, we can't afford $47 million upfront, say, and then you reimburse us after the fact. My God, we can't do that. So those type of things started to evolve. Absolutely.
In that one town, the high school started out at like 52 million. I think it ended up at 91.
That's right.
Mayor lost, just didn't get,
Yeah.
what many people they were.
And that's why
You can't
OPMs
blame
now,
them.
that's why they place these people who now keep track of all that for you because that's what they do. So you're right,
That's a hell of a.
absolutely. I don't know how you recover from that. That's,
Yeah, it's just.
it's unbelievable.
So it was a lot, I mean, like I
Sure.
said, it's evolved since we started in '08, when they did when it got passed, and then till 15, when a vote actually took place, MSBA was evolving along the
Sure.
way, so. But that is a conversation that we didn't have, because it's get the building,
That's it.
and then you get this surprise, and hopefully, once the initial surprise is over
Yeah.
with, I mean, it's still gonna cost more, but
Sure.
it's this initial get in the door.
I have to say that this is look, there was a lot of turnover at the superintendent level last, whatever, before. It doesn't surprise me that people, didn't sit there and go, okay. Because, again, the building wasn't even a sure thing until 15, 16, or when the vote actually happened. So the fact is that, Steve did a great job. Steve Hemmon did a great job twice, right? The first time and the second time. But it was quite obvious when we sat down. I said, well, what's the plan, in terms of this, but no one had if there was one, it was probably so long ago, and it probably wouldn't have mattered anyway, because it had been so many years ago. But that's why we started so quickly last year talking about this, because it was clear that it just kind of fell off the table. And right, get the building and we'll figure it out, so.
So, and that's why I thought it was important to ask you here, and, you know, I hope you're at other venues, and, to talk about
Yep.
more things, just to keep this, in the public focus.
I
And,
appreciate
you know,
that.
people hear it enough,
Mhm.
maybe the questions or the answers or the information gets out, however, you know, pieces, parts, the whole thing at one time, but I just figured that the more the better, and, cause May is gonna be here real quick.
Oh, it's honestly,
And-
May is a blink of an eye away, and as you know, Joe, you know, our office, you know, whatever we're very open about the information. So again, whatever information that folks think they need, should need, have need, we'll try to get it as best as and as quickly as possible. Sometimes it takes us a while. We've gotten a lot better with generating that type of financial information over the past 3 years, so
My experience, it's usually a pretty quick turnaround,
we try.
between Sue and Anne Marie, it's
Sure.
usually,
Yep.
it's usually
Yeah.
pretty quick.
Well, it's your information, right? It's everyone's information. So I really appreciate the time. Again, you know, you'll unfortunately probably see me a lot. We'll try to keep it short and try to make it as relevant as possible. I do want to know what people are thinking and their questions, and you're going to hear very quickly about us setting up meetings, and we'll go from there. But we'll come back at any time if questions arise, and so I make myself available.
Are you on the, next Wednesday's selectmen's meeting, when he's gonna like present the budget and stuff? I don't know if.
I don't, if I am, then Susan Varney will know. She just tells me where to go, and I go, okay. Usually during that meeting,
I didn't
I'm
see your
usually,
name on it,
I'm
but
usually
I didn't
here.
know.
Yeah, I just show up as a, you know.
What day is it?
27th?
We have school committee, so
Oh,
no.
school I know
I'll
where
be
you'll
here.
be.
I will be here. I will not be here, I mean, well, I'll be at the
Okay,
school
that
committee,
answers
so-
that.
See?
But this will be, should be touched on, then, cause it'll be the initial
Yep,
town budget presentation and the warrant and the draft form and
Right.
stuff. And then March 9th will
Yeah.
be the day we start,
we'll start doing it.
everybody be telling about their little section.
Yep,
so
and I
to
will
speak.
say to you that Carter and I have had, I don't even know how many conversations at this point. I just had one today at 4:30 with both Rhiann and Margaret,
Well, it's,
which is good, so.
I mean, it ain't a lot, but it is moving in the direction, cause the last number was, 1,180,000, and now it's 1,016,000, so, yeah.
Well, and again, those are it's funny, because I thought more questions would come during the trial. I really did, because $1 million is a tremendous amount of money, but I know that people just had to kind of really just kind of let that kind of soak in and figure out
Well, and then
what to
go-
ask.
Yeah, I mean,
At this point, you know.
You gotta look over it, and
Yeah.
then, you know.
Of course you do,
it's-
of course.
You know.
It's a lot of
the questions-
information.
The questions come after,
Yeah.
man,
Yep.
but it's, and I appreciate you coming, like I said, I wanna give you, you, the school committee, the district, every opportunity to, explain this, cause,
And we're open.
time is
I mean
tight,
that.
it's around the corner,
And I agree, and if there are things or questions, and we're looking for every good idea, we're looking for input.
Sure.
We constantly are looking to improve, you know, how we do things, and not only that, but how we think. It's easy for us to think from the school side of things. That's what we do. That doesn't always make it the best, and so, you know, we're open, absolutely.
and we have another school district that we have to watch, and I'm watching Monty Tech's
Yep.
budget. Hopefully I thought they were gonna come earlier than this already, but, I know they're talking, but.
Yeah, I know that, yeah,
I
exactly.
haven't seen that, but I mean, that's another one that'll be
Right.
coming, and I probably will be up a little bit, but, does anybody else have any direct questions or anything? I know most of us were at the first one, but like I said, I just wanted to give you every opportunity.
No, I appreciate it, I really do.
This presentation's online too, right? You have it on your website?
Yes, we
Okay,
do.
so we
We do.
can share it.
Yep.
Yep.
It's up there. It's in the budget. We have it on tab now, right? The budget tab? Yeah, there's a tab budget. I believe it says FY '20 budget, but it's up there.
Perfect.
It's up there.
Do you have any issues with certifying your E&D? No?
Not at all. We have an excellent accountant, obviously, and Marie is top-notch. So in terms of the financial, we're in good shape at the school. We really are.
Okay.
We really are. We're in great shape.
So, is, the target still the 13th of March, or as far as possibly? I know at the
That
last
time,
meeting.
you know what, that's funny. I don't know. That changed a lot. I have to,
Yeah,
They changed it.
Yeah, they
last
did.
week.
the 4th or the 13th,
Sixth,
maybe the 6th.
Oh, they were gonna have that meeting and try to move it up.
yeah. They changed the date.
And I know that was like a shoot for a goal,
It's-
not a,
Wednesday, March 6th is the budget
hearing.
hearing.
This coming is the preliminary.
That's right. Thank you. I was ahead a month. Yep.
Yeah, preliminary is at 6 o'clock on the 27th, and the final is the following week on the 6th.
at 6, that's at 6 also, so.
Yep.
And that was honestly again, to speed the process up so people can do what they need to do, so we're not dragging out just the protocol of it, right? The timing, which is important to everybody, so that way we can,
And again, that's another thing I think, is important, that people would hear the dates and the meetings and
Mhm.
what's gonna happen, so I know, you can't force people to come, and sometimes you look out there and a lot of money, where is everybody? But
Yeah.
just tell them and inform them and hope that they show.
and we're gonna do a better job at getting those dates out. Again, we have the whole social media platform, we have Twitter, Facebook, we do all of that, of course, and we have a great one-call system. It's not called One Call, it's Blackboard Connect now, but we can do those type of things, and we will definitely start pushing these. The preliminary, of course, will be next week, and, next week. So we'll push out all the dates. They're on the slideshow presentation in the very back, and we've put that out there. I believe they're already on the Facebook page. So we'll keep looking at other ways to the TV, the access, and we'll figure it that way too. But I appreciate that.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming,
Appreciate it.
appreciate it. Thank you, Anne Marie.
Thank you very much.
Have a good
night.
evening.
Have a good night. Very helpful, thanks, Jeff.
Done. The minutes, we don't have them, we'll have them for our next meeting. The next item, is the Moody's credit rating. This was the item that was requested to be on the agenda at our last meeting that Mike wanted to discuss. And it should be mentioned because it involves the school. There is a thing on the town website, it has the news release, and there is a link that will take you right to the Moody's
Yep.
site. It's 4 February 2019, and it shows that Moody assigned us initial A1. You can also go through there and look and see, back in July of 2013, the town was downgraded to an A2. And then I think it went off the charts.
What was it, what year was that?
That was 2013, July 30th.
And then we lost our rating.
And
didn't
that
we?
was, then when they downgraded it to A2, and that was actually fiscal 14. And I think they had already done it in fiscal 12. And then after the A2, I didn't go back and track farther.
Right.
But it was on the
But we
downhill
lost it,
going.
and we didn't have a rating for several years,
Several
correct?
years,
Yeah.
I believe.
And so to come back from that, after a lot of work, you know, the audits were caught up. I think that's good for the town. I mean, I think the administration here was very, very eager to send out that information. You know, what does it mean for us now? I think we had discussed about, yeah, we can borrow at a better rate, but we can borrow for longer. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, it allows us to go out for the general obligation bonds for the long-term borrowing instead of doing
Yeah.
the short-term bands, which,
Yeah, Moody's had a table for an A1, what the range would be for the different rates.
yeah, and I think that is actually on the,
So does this help us in trying to, you know, the budget shortfall that we have, you know, the bad news that we have to drag into town meeting? Does this credit rating help us at this point?
it,
Does it give us any flexibility to say, you know, the sky isn't falling, you know?
well,
Well, it really sets your interest rate on the money you're borrowing. So if you have a worse rating,
Yeah,
you're
but if
gonna
we're
get higher.
expending less money on debt, you know, see what I'm saying? If we, there's no doubt in my mind that you know, Chris and his team are doing whatever they can, you know, in the 1 million shortfall that they have. Like he was saying, the school's gotta open, but what flexibility do we have? I know the Board of Selectmen met 2-3 weeks ago, and, you know, Mr. Kaplis was saying, you know, I hope the advisory board talks about this because we're fresh out of ideas. You know, what kind of flexibility do we have now when this discussion, so when this plays out and May comes here, you know, we're here in May and we're at town meeting, judging how some of the articles went on the last town meeting, this one's not gonna go, you know, it's gonna be rough. How do we make it, how do we, you know, what's the spoonful of sugar here?
yeah. Well, I would note that out of the 1,016,000, that's not all on the school district. Some of that is, it's the regional transportation cost, which
Went
in the
up.
regional school district, they have to bus everybody. Like, God, they can put a limit, say if you live within a half a mile or a mile from school, you can walk. In a regional school district, they have to bus everybody. And the carrot was, the state was supposed to reimburse the districts if you regionalized all of the busing costs. They have never done that. Last year in or this year, fiscal 19, the town had to come up with an additional $675,463. For fiscal 20, it jumped to $780,287. That's $104,824. And also, the property values increase, and suddenly, you're all wealthier, so you can afford to pay a little more in taxes for the minimum contribution. That's that formula that they keep talking about they're gonna fix. It was really in the spotlight, and they're all talking, it's still on the MMA page and stuff, and Representative Whips and Senator Goby talked a little bit about that. They were trying to shoot for getting it to 80%, but I don't see that happening. So out of this 1,116,000, you have 214,000 and some change in the minimum contribution, because like I said, your home value, your house went up in value, well, you're suddenly wealthier, you can pay more.
Mm.
Who figures that? I don't know, it's just, that's how we get hit with that. And the transportation costs. I mean, $700,000. That's $700,000 the town's gotta spend on something that the state is supposed to cover, and they don't. And that takes away from, what we could do with those funds. And the school, the operating costs themselves is what actually falls on the district is, for our share, is $854,000. So then you add up all those other above costs up there. So I mean, a good chunk of it is the operational cost of the school district, but some of it comes from increases of the state. And I think that's, a message that needs to get out, but, we're limited in options. If it's Prop 2.5 override, the election now is after town meeting. So if the election was before, it would be like we did, last year, the override passed at the ballot, so you go into town meeting, at least you know the override passed. Town meeting doesn't have to appropriate the money, they don't have to spend it, but at least you know you have that hurdle passed. But now this year, it's town meeting, then the town election, and it'll have to be almost 100%, it'll have to be a contingency, Prop 2.5, will pass this school budget contingent upon the passage of a Prop 2.5
I see what you're
override of
saying.
X amount of dollars. And then, if you plan ahead, and you put that on the ballot, and if you look at the history of the town, the contingency articles at town meeting have passed. Because you're at town meeting, everybody's looking around, oh yeah, I'll raise my hand for that. But then you get in the ballot box and nobody's looking at you, and they failed at the ballot box. And if you wanna try again, see, cause then if you approve the budget at town meeting, now you have to come up with the money. If you voted no, then it goes back to the school committee and you go back and forth like we did in 13. But once you have a contingency vote at an annual town meeting, there's a certain amount of time frame where you have to have an election. So say if it failed at the regular annual town election, in theory, you could try again. You have you have a time frame. I forget the number of days or the time. I would have to look that up. Where they could, have more meetings, talk to the people, explain things further and further, and then try again at a ballot at a special election. So it is gonna be a difficult, hard vote for, cause people just, they didn't override in 13. Last year, there was an increase in the school budget, not a big one, but it was an increase. And we had the override last year, and now you turn around this year, you're doing the borrowing cost, the long-term, bond, and that's gonna hit the tax rate. I mean, it's already voted for, they already approved it, but I mean, that's coming on the tax rate for the building itself and the police station, and now you're gonna look for another override in the $1.65 range, $1.60 now that it's dropped by like 100,000. But it's,
So are you saying that it's backwards between the town election and the town meeting?
well, yeah, because before, when the election was before the town meeting, they could do like they did last year. You put the override on the ballot, and if it passes at the ballot, that means your levy now can increase. Then you go to town meeting and you ask the people to appropriate the money. Like I said, they're not under no obligation to appropriate that money. But
So the person that's,
the
I
hard
mean,
part is, the hard part is done, because again, if you go
Yeah.
back and look at the town meetings.
well, what is
when
the
they
school
had-
gonna do? In this scenario, they approve the budget,
And they present-
whatever happens at town meeting, and then it's not, the override is not passed.
Right.
What is the school's recourse?
Well, one scenario is if you go to town meeting and the school budget passes, then the town just has to find a way to pay for the bill. If town meeting votes the school budget down and just says no, it's too much, no. It gets sent back to the school committee, just like in 13. The school committee has a choice. They can either recertify the same budget, or they can recertify a lower budget. Send it back to the town. We have to have a special town meeting to have a vote on it, to see if we will go for it or not. If they say no again, it goes back to the school committee, and this goes, and you get into July, and I believe it's after July 15th. But, again, I'd have to look up these regulations to verbatim, but you
Right,
get into a
yeah.
1/12 budget situation where you start paying the 1/12 of the budget, and then you go into that joint meeting that we had in 13 with Phillipston and voters, we have like a town meeting, but it'd be Phillipston and Templeton. And the school committee would put the budget before that meeting, and it's either yes or no. And if it's no, I think the time frame is in December. The DESE comes in, looks at, and I'm going by what has happened in other school districts where it played out this long. They look at the school's books, okay, how much you asking for, what are your expenses, da, 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 da. Then they look at the town's books, and in the end, they say, well, they tell the school district, well, this is what you're gonna get. And they come to the towns and tell the towns, this is what you're gonna pay. And that's that. It's not the preferred, it's a long drawn-out process, and you get told what you're gonna pay. And some of the school districts locally that have done it, the school district didn't get, the budget that they wanted, but the towns didn't get the cuts that they wanted either. You get told, this is what you're paying, and that's that.
So at that point, does the town then would have to make cuts to meet that budget because there's no override?
You either cut the town budget or it'll go on the tax recap sheet. If you go, the DESE website, Code of Mass Regulation 2, it's all printed out step by step, exactly how the process goes. And in 13, like I said, we went to, the joint meeting, and we went for the override rather than cut out of the budget, and the town passed the override in 13. I think like 9 towns went for an override, a special town meeting in October, and Templeton was the only one. I don't know how that happened, but Templeton was the only town that passed the override. But it was either do the Prop 2.5 override, or you take it out of your town budget. You cut or you override. Again, it was, a long drawn-out process. I think we had, it was 3 or 4. Well, I wasn't in town, but I think there was 3, the annual town meeting, and then like 3 special town meetings. If you look on the town website, under town meetings, you can go see all of them.
Mhm.
Then the joint meeting. And that's what we ended up doing. We had some informational meetings, I think 3, in addition to selectmen meetings and school committee, and department heads had things, I still got the paperwork. They went down what they could cut, how they could cut, how it would affect their department, how much they could come up with to get to the amount we needed for the school budget. 500 and something thousand, I think it was. So we were ready with, that option, and then the other option was an override. And I wanted a bigger override, but it was what it was. But the town passed a Prop 2.5 override to pay for the school. And that, like I said, you get to that joint meeting, and, then that's what it comes down to.
So-
You either cut, or you do this, or you get told
Mhm.
what you'll do.
There's a possibility that if we have to go through all the process that Jeff does, Moody's may look at it unfavorably and lower your rating also, where the town isn't willing to invest.
Because we
What they
already
look at
have
it as, the town's
so much
not willing
debt.
to invest, and they've made a lot of strides to get to this A1 rating. Well, of course, you want a better rating than that, but you kind of we're in a process of getting better and better, and this could kind of kick you back a few steps.
Yeah, if you're not gonna keep investing in yourselves.
Well, I mean, it's not like Moody's came and looked and said, oh my gosh, everything that you have is 100% golden. I mean, we had,
Nope. No,
we
it's-
had some rocky
Sure.
rockiness, I think about it at this
There's a
point
lot
to
of
say,
debt. The debt is high for.
what can we
you know,
do?
our tax base and stuff, so.
you know, is there anything that we can do, or is our job to inform, you know?
We can look at this and.
$1
like I
million
said,
bucks
that's
isn't
why
going
one of the
away. You
reasons
have
I
to-
invited
Yeah,
Chris to
I'm
here
glad
to-
you did.
To put this out there and to talk about these things.
You know, how is the community going
And I could,
to, how is this gonna play out
Right.
if we do have several meetings?
I'm gonna look that up.
How is
and,
that gonna play out? Is it gonna be a core of 50 people in town who don't want the override? Is it gonna be, 200 people who have children that are in the district?
Like I said,
What can we do?
historically, these contingency votes, because you go to town meeting and you pass this budget and pay for it this way contingent on the passage of a two and a half override at the ballot.
Right.
And a lot of these contingency votes have passed at town meeting, but when they go to the ballot after the fact, they failed. For things for like buying equipment, funding salaries that would, whatever it was for, they weren't always successful. So I said, last year, the election was before town meeting, you put it on the ballot, once it
Mhm.
passes at the ballot, then, well, you've approved it, so you either don't appropriate the money, or since you approved it, you must wanna appropriate the money on what it was presented in front of you for. This is just it's a hard pill to swallow, because
Yes.
we got those two things going on from taxation, the police station and, the school
School.
building. I mean, we got that water tank and we have the pump station, but that's paid for, not out of taxation. So we got those two big things, and now this, and I think maybe it's, maybe the tide is turning a little bit, and people will say, we built the school, like Chris said, what, you gonna leave it empty?
Mm.
I mean, that's an option too. I mean, you don't have to it's right into regional school. I mean, you don't have to turn that building over to the school. I mean, build a building and let it sit there empty, or use it, but, it makes absolutely no sense to do that. So now we have to, fill the building. And again, this is something, woulda, coulda, shoulda, that wasn't part of the conversation. Like you said, it should have been more, should be thinking about these things, but.
I agree.
It was so concentrated on just getting that vote passed to get the money to build it.
I
And
think
then-
Dr. Casavant can actually, I was trying to guide that discussion to say, we can feed on each other's energy in terms of what is going to be able to provide the citizens in Templeton enough information to vote what they're looking for. And for everything that Chris was talking about, putting it in a good light to say, some of these things were unknowable. You're not gonna know years in advance what your staffing is going to be and what a reorg is gonna cost. And, water and all these different things that he did a great job of breaking down for us. I think we need to be able to understand that, for whatever this body's responsibility is to either explain it. Ultimately, the way it's gonna play out, we're going to vote on the article. And we're gonna try and do that in the best way possible, and then, we're allowed to talk through that. Our hope is that everyone in that room is still open enough to listen and and vote.
I think it's gonna be I don't know if it's gonna be close or not, but There was certainly
My
gonna
hope
be-
is that it's based off of the information that has been put out into the public rather than just fear. And when I say fear of an override.
right, and I know it's a hit, it's, buck something. Right on the back of another, dollar, whatever that other,
Yep. Mr. Kaplis
And
was
then-
telling me they're gonna close Otter River Road. The bridge was decertified down. So
Which
that's
bridge?
it's headed down towards the paper mill in Onion.
Oh,
the-
that bridge right there that
Yeah.
they've been doing somewhere, that's, MassDOT,
The one that goes over there?
Yeah.
Oh, I just went down there the other day.
Well, it's still, it's still open. They're gonna, they have to close off,
Okay.
you know, one lane or otherwise, but they have to provide for safe travel, but that's late breaking news, and
Wow.
that's gonna cost some money.
That's, you get through the state system with that, and it'll take, it can go faster than what it does, but it's like, they did one on 202 in Winchester, and it was, I don't know, at least a couple of winters, replacing that bridge, cause they do one side,
Yep.
and then they do the other side, but they could do the whole bridge in a weekend, but, 'cause they do it on interstates.
So, you know, the major, you know, the driver for an override, as much information as we can install into that for when we make our recommendation or otherwise, you know, whether it's for or against or otherwise, so if we can provide as much information prior to and be involved in that conversation,
Yeah, I'll
because
look at
ultimately,
details of that,
Yeah.
the 1/12 budget, the timeline and how exactly it goes.
And where does that money come from?
Well, the town will start paying, you start paying 1/12 of the school budget until you have that joint meeting. And that joint meeting, if the budget fails, you know, you say you vote it down, well, that's, and I believe it's a December timeframe, sometime in December, the DSE will come in.
Yeah.
And
So
they
it's-
look at all the paperwork and then they go, well, you wanted $1 million, you're getting 800,000. You didn't wanna pay 800,000, well, you're paying 800,000.
kind of like a mini receivership.
Yeah,
So just to roughly estimate, a 12th would be, it's gonna be less, but 100,000 just.
something, right,
So where does that 100,000,
that's town budget. That's the position you put yourself in.
Okay.
You start, you know, doing that. And
If the-
it's-
Yeah, if the
it's-
town says no at the ballot box, and the budgets are not certified, and we don't have the money to spend, I guess what he's saying, at some point,
Yeah.
you're taking it out of Hyde. Whether the school's cutting it out, dropping services and otherwise, or whether the town's absorbing that.
that's right.
Yeah.
It's,
Well,
you know.
It's tough, cause I think.
And sometimes, you know, so you get in a tough position and you pick the lesser of the two evils.
Yeah. And
It's
if that's
not,
every month that's going on.
it's, you know, it's not a good way to go.
No.
It is, it's an option if you have to be aware of, you know, if you don't do this, this is what happens.
Mhm.
Well, if it got down to December at that point, though, we'd essentially paid off
Yeah,
half of it. Starts in
Yeah,
July,
that's
like,
true.
give or take, so, yeah, I don't know.
I have it somewhere, I can't just,
You would hope that there's some continuity with that. I understand what you're saying about, at that point, you've already expended half your budget.
Right. Well, if we're
But-
saying the town doesn't have the money,
Yeah,
and the school doesn't have the money, but you need the money.
yeah, it's,
but you've
There's-
been.
There's no magic here,
But you've been,
so-
I guess, but you've been executing as if you've had that budget.
right,
So the contingency is, you're gonna run out of money.
Mhm.
yeah.
I don't know what that,
Yeah, and then what
yes,
happens?
That's my question, is what happens at that point in time? And I have no idea.
You run the town till you can't run no more and you shut down, like in 14, it was 7 weeks, they
Yeah,
laid
you-
off
you'd mentioned that
almost,
before, yeah.
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 you know, I mean, a good number of people, and they kept some on, whatever you have money on. But, and again, it's a hard pill to swallow, but hey, people, you voted for the building. And I don't care.
I feel
There's
you.
some things
I
in
definitely feel
in
the way
school
that you're
budget
saying
that
it. Yep.
you know, then we could argue about different things, you know, like what is needed, what is wanted, and there's a couple things that, you know, they could do, but it's not gonna make a big dent in that total amount.
Yeah.
So, you know, you voted to build that building. You got to follow through
Correct.
and
I agree.
staff it, cause, you know, we gonna build that building and then just leave it empty?
That would be a
Yeah.
bigger waste.
And
So what
you- well,
happens
your
in
insurance
21
goes up
and
'cause it's an empty
22?
building, blah, 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 it's just,
Well, that's my question.
hopefully, you know,
I think-
once you get this initial shock over with, you'll just get back
That's
to
my
a
hope. That's
normal
where I think we
cycle
can
of,
earn some capital there.
you know, your retirement, your health insurance. The
credibility.
normal things that go up every year a little bit. Hopefully that's, you know, 21, 22, you'll get into like a normal
Right,
cycle
so
increase.
what's the recurring costs out of that?
Yeah, like what is a one-time cost versus what's gonna stick?
It's like the 400,000 that was mentioned, is that a one-time startup, or?
That was my feeling, is a lot of that million were, related to startup costs. And that's why I said to him, wait, you know, judging on, you know, the reaction when I said, what happens in 21 and 22? You know, we might be very successful in this budget season, but not if everyone thinks that we're gonna do Groundhog Day this time next year,
That's where they,
asking for another million.
they should really do a costing projection of 3 to 5, you know. 21, 22, 23, what do you see, you know, your teachers' contracts locked in for a couple, 3 years,
Right.
you know, health insurance and retirement costs,
Yep.
you know. I mean, they keep, you know,
Raises.
the town's the same way. I
None
mean,
of
we have to
none of
cover
those made me like, you know, like my mouth didn't drop open. It's like, I know some of those costs are, you know, raises, cost of living
The thing that
additions.
really bothers me is the transportation things that, you know,
Yeah.
is the whole.
I don't
whole
understand
things
why we
is
can't get that.
regionalizing the
If you're
school
saying that we
is-
should, why can't, you know, what isn't being done?
Do we get nothing, or do we get we were supposed to get 100 and we
They-
get a
the
smaller
state provides
percentage?
a little bit,
Okay,
um,
that's what I was.
but it's like
confused about.
700,000 short.
Yeah,
So the way it was explained at the Board of Selectmen meeting, because I was there, is, and this is what Ann Goby was talking about, was that, non-regionalized school districts complained
mhm.
and said, if you're gonna reimburse the regional school districts, how come you're not reimbursing the single districts? You know, we have to carry that burden as a city. So she didn't use this as an example, but just as an example, Gardner pays all their own busing. They don't have any opportunity to ask the state for reimbursement. So now cities are also reimbursed on a selective, whatever chart they use or whatever. But, the idea and what they were talking about is they are pushing and looking to get up to
The
80%.
Okay.
So in a town like ours, where we have a much bigger geographic footprint than we have population, if we filled all of our space, we'd have a much bigger town or city. And other places, they talked about this like Pioneer Valley Rural Caucus. So I think when you live in Boston, everything on this side of 495, but you know, looking at other smaller towns like Wendell and Ware, places that face the same sort of issues we do. We have regional districts. We have a vast geographical area. We've got to bus every single kid. And, you know, I know there are some routes in town where those littles are sitting on the bus for 45 minutes or an hour. And that all costs money. So she's looking at that, but that wouldn't happen for fiscal 20. Or, I mean, I would guess probably not even 21. But it really depends. It depends on how fast they're able to get things where it needs to be. And even at that, I mean, it's got to get paid for first, you know?
So I think and I'll look up that code and send that to everybody so we can be on there. But that's something I believe that should be part of this conversation, you know. It ain't scaring you, this, because we did it in 13, it ain't that long ago. If, you know, if you voted this way, okay. If you say no, then these are the steps that will happen. As soon as you vote no at town, if you go to town meeting and look at the school budget and just say no, okay, this is what's gonna happen. It's gonna go back to the school committee, and they get to reconsider it, and they can either send back the same number, they can send a higher number, or they can send a lower number. And and in the meantime, you having these special town meetings and it's another special election and stuff, you're spending money.
I think that has to happen, that contingency needs to be voiced. I don't know if what, you know, when we go through our warrant meeting, the article meeting, if we can word whatever our response is going to be to include that information, or even individually, someone gets up and explains that, because the way that the last town meeting went, it was a railroad, it was fast. People spoke up, it didn't seem like good information was being put out. It was the gut information of the audience, of the constituents, I shouldn't say audience, And it didn't go well. People were voting on something that wasn't adequately, debated.
Well, and people need to attend.
Yeah.
They need to attend town meeting. They need to be up to speed on what's going on right now. I think if you
Right.
attended town meeting and you didn't know anything about what was coming down the pipeline, you are gonna feel like you got smacked in the face with
Yeah.
all this budget information and all of the information about opening the new school.
Yeah.
And knowing that there's still a trip to the ballot after that. You know, not only do we need people at the town meeting to vote, to sit, to discuss, to make their voices heard and to take that vote, don't let 20 people run this town that are at that meeting.
Or someone with.
And I'm not
or
even talking
with
about
bad
board
information, yeah.
members, just citizens that attend. They
Yeah.
do their due diligence. They show up and they say what they want.
Yep.
Everybody needs to do that. You know, people with kids in this school district, especially at this point, or pending children in this school district. If I had toddlers, I would want to attend these meetings. I would want to understand. And knowing that the trip to the ballot is the following week. It's a very big deal.
That's an interesting thing, though, when I had a conversation with the not Chris, but, they were looking to put a new roof on the Templeton Center Elementary School, and, you know, it failed, and I said, you know, you got this many kids, there's this many parents, there's this many voters, how come that didn't pass? They looked at me, she looked at me and says, well, I says, you know, they're just about as concerned about their tax dollars as people that don't have kids in school. It's just, but again, they've gone to this step and built that building, and now it's, you just gotta keep investing in it.
Yes.
And hopefully, maybe, I can email Anne Marie and she might have maybe start looking at or come up some estimates for 21, 22, or ask about get some hard answers on, like the teacher's contract and stuff. Is that, you just did it this year, is that
Yeah.
a 2-year, 3-year, so,
I think that.
cause that's a big, you know, when
It's
you do
very
those.
beneficial if it seems like a shock, I think they're gonna be able to explain that shock of why. It's, you know, and we can talk about the transportation as well, but I think part of that discussion should be, we don't anticipate this, hopefully, we don't anticipate this in 21 and 22. We may have other emergencies in town that require attention, but at least from the school's perspective, they can say, we're doing well, all these numbers are pretty tight, but this is what our situation is. And I think that's all we can do.
When we were at I know I came in late to that all boards meeting, when they went over this whole presentation, at the end, one of the women, I think she was on the school committee, had mentioned free cash. And, you know, well, you have this balance, why couldn't you apply that? And I understand, because it's how we got our Moody's rating, and we don't wanna touch that.
Yeah.
But that may be a question that will come up at town meeting, you know, and just having an explanation prepared, I think would be beneficial, whoever that should be.
So the way I interpreted that, and I could be wrong, but it sounded like free cash is more of a CapEx
Yeah,
spend versus what we're talking about here is an OpEx.
okay,
And, I mean, I'm no expert in this, but if that's the case, using CapEx money for OpEx costs is just, it's a no-no.
right,
It's a
okay.
really big no-no, so.
And some communities that have a big chunk of free cash, like, you know, you get $1 million free cash, they do take some of that and give a little tax relief. You know, say if you need to come up with 10 million, you take 300,000 or 500,000 free cash, and you go, boom, okay, now we only need to come up with 9.5 million, say, because we have that, so that's a little relief for the taxpayers, but,
But that's,
One thing that would be nice to know is with the A1 rating, what that would do to the tax rate of what was projected, and is it maybe gonna be lower, so the initial tax burden that people thought they were gonna get on the school is less. So now, maybe
Right.
an override's more palatable.
I absolutely agree with you, because that is, again, good news stories that you can use to your advantage.
Yeah.
We got this rating because there was a lot of hard work and yelling and screaming, but we got there.
And then there's the additional, another 12 million gonna be borrowed next year. So that will be another addition to the
What, to the
tax
school?
rate. For the school, cause they're
Yeah.
borrowing, 12 million this year,
Yep.
then they're gonna do another 12 million
Yep.
long-term. So you're talking at least around 24 million. There's just the bond proceeds and this, and that could be a little bit less, but, you gotta remember that, that's all part of that $47 million thing, and that's assuming that when MSBA does the final checkoff of the building, they look at it and everything, and all their stuff they're gonna reimburse is, here it is, last check,
Yeah.
whatever's left, that's, the town expense. So,
Tony, that's a really good way to bring us back down on to topic. Get us back to the agenda. I like that. If you didn't mean it, then you should just tell us that you meant it.
but,
It was good.
So, we have to do, you gotta think of that too, but,
I just think that there's a cost of business, a cost to live in a town, and costs aren't going down.
Yeah.
It's just a
Well, I
fact
said
of
it-
life.
You don't have to explain that to the ones with kids
Yeah.
in the school.
Yeah.
It's the ones that already, there's kids have gone through the school, and now they look at it as,
And I understand that, but, they were in that position at one time.
Sure they were, yeah.
And sometimes to be part of a community, there are things that happen that you may not like.
Mhm.
I went to 6th grade in this room and walked to school in the snow, uphill both ways.
So, I mean,
But-
I understand people don't wanna pay more taxes, but, I
You know,
mean,
you-
it's
you-
just
you
the way it
voted to
is.
Good
build that
schools
building, so-
build a better community.
And I think when Dr. Casavant's, what they've done over the past 4 or 5 years as far as increasing school choice is a credit to them, so they're offsetting a lot of those costs. I would like to see that the Monty Tech formula be done a little different. I think that for a small town like Templeton, we pay too much, but,
Mm.
and, you look at their facilities, they don't seem to go without, so.
Right.
It would be nice if all the kids that lived in town wanted to stay in the school district instead
I
of
don't
being
know that they
somewhere else,
don't.
but
Usually that's a parental choice.
it would be a perfect thing. So, I made a note to myself about that, and I'll send a thing to Carter to see and to Chris for them to, that's gotta come up in the conversation some way, not to scare anybody, but it's just, your option A and B, and if you do this one, then, okay, that's fine, but if you vote no on this, then this is the next steps. And you can just look at it, it's just, you do this, you have another meeting, it goes back to the school committee.
You look
have
at the
another meeting.
history, and the school's gonna get almost everything they need anyway.
You get a joint, you have a
Because
joint.
that's how
you
the
have a
state
joint
looks at it.
meeting and, let's see, was
So
it
why force the issue?
Quabbin and
Right, do we
East
wanna vote for it or do we wanna force
Spencer,
it?
East Brookfield. There's some local school districts that did it, and then, no, the schools didn't get everything they wanted, and the town, but like I said, nobody wins.
Right.
Your books say you can afford to eat a little bit of this, and you guys can come up with more money, and
Yeah, I mean, I think that the school is doing everything that they can
so.
to come up with a budget that is reasonable.
I got that
Um,
impression.
You look at the Medicare, it's revenue, if you will, or receipts in,
The reimbursement
has,
stuff is,
increased quite a bit over the last few years, and that's kind of a credit to them. Okay, what's billable, what's not,
Yeah.
and
And the kids are
doing
getting the
that.
services that they need, so,
that's probably the most important
Yeah.
thing there, that the kids are getting
like
the
you said,
services they
spending money
need.
to earn some money.
But there are things like the hiring and staffing regs that say, you don't have to have a principal in
Psychologist.
every elementary school and stuff, but if the district says, well, we want that, and they put it in the budget and they give it to you, again, you either vote it yes or you vote it no. And if you vote it no, this is what happens. If you vote it yes, well, now
You
you
just-
have to pay
you-
for that. It's an invoice for a service
you
provided to
overload.
you by the school district. It's a lot, it says, and you gotta pay for that service. So then the select board and probably us and others are gonna have to provide information and convince the residents that it's, yeah, it's a hard one to swallow and it's a big chunk of money, but you voted for the building, another million. You voted for 47 million, what's another million, really? I mean, if you wanted that new school building, I mean, it's, but,
Yeah, it's the administrative startup for it. It's not, it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with the construction or otherwise. Again, they, like Dr. Casavant said, it's turnkey operation. They're gonna hand over the keys, and they're gonna be, wow, great new
And-
school.
And
But they have
unfortunately,
to fill it.
a
hopefully
lot of
we-
the equipment that they have at, both Baldwinville Elementary and what they have at the middle school for the kindergarten and first grade is old.
Sure.
It needs to be replaced. So here's an opportunity. I mean, you don't wanna move into a new house and
Yeah.
put junk in there.
Yeah, it's,
I'm ready to
So-
move on.
all right, and we got a little off topic, but,
It's all right,
so
it was
the
all
credit
on the
rate,
same
no,
thing,
no,
so.
it's actually a good thing to talk about. It's gonna be the big thing for the, they're in cost in the town budget, but I mean, the school thing is gonna be.
Yeah, well, we're talking about it early enough where our minds can chew on it. So when we actually do form the language of this committee's recommendations, I think it's gonna be, it's not gonna be stuff that we thought of that night.
Right,
It's gonna
yeah.
be plenty of stuff that we've thought about prior to, with the input of the school committee, or Dr. Casavant,
Yeah, so,
Henry.
and now, if we're all done with the Moody's and,
Yep.
and the school, and we agree, we're gonna have to try to be part of funneling the information out there, to inform the people and giving them the sides of, why to do it, and, what's involved if you don't do it, what's the, which ain't gonna be too good. The next thing I'm on here, and it's really some information, but it's about the sewer collections and moving the collections into the, and Amy was at that meeting, and they talked about it, and what the select board's steps are gonna do to try to make this happen. And it's kind of, some of the stuff's a little convoluted and things, but, and yes, I did it on paper, because I know everybody needs some trees. I went and I printed out copies from the DOR report of 2009, the 2011 management letter from Melanson Heath, where, and 2011, you go 2010, 2012, it pretty much says the same thing. I did the audits for 13, 14, 15, 16, the page where it talks about that, the 17 and the 18 audits. And this is kind of turning into and there was talk at the selectmen's meeting, they want to get an opinion from town council, and this involves spending, money. And it's what's been, recommended, and I also stapled on there the option, that the selectmen voted to propose to the sewer commissioners. And the selectmen also stated if the sewer commissioners had a counter proposal that did the same thing as far as collections, then that would be an option. They have a sewer commissioner, the chairman, Mark Machete, listed on the agenda, and I believe that he's going to attend. And that is the meeting that they will do the initial budget and warrant, so I hope everyone that can be there is there. In the DOR review in 2009, it talked about centralize the collection of taxes, fees, and other charges. And it it talked about the light and water and the sewer departments. Both, they create the commitment, that is the bill, and then they receive it. And the suggestion was that the collection part of it, paying the bill, should be relocated to the town collector or tax collector. And then there was also some things, some recommendations in that same financial review, where it talks about the sewer department or the sewer commissioners, the things that they should do, a multi-year revenue and expenditure forecast, a capital improvement program. It states that they're a fee for service. It's not from taxation, even though the betterments in the early days, the debts was split, and that's no longer the case. Now it's all sewer debt is paid for by the sewer fees. The sewer commissioners should plan and account for their retained earnings, which is an enterprise funds, like free cash. And an interesting item under number 5, it's page 15, it's the second page for the financial review, that the town accountant should develop a formula for an annual indirect cost reimbursement to the town. Like, they take care of, and they do this for the light department and water department, the health insurance, the retirement, the W-2s, all that stuff. Within that enterprise fund accounting format, if you do these services, then that fund can cover the cost of doing that. Even for like the audit, and it's suggested that there's an annual fee paid to the town from the sewer enterprise fund. We do all these things for you, and this is how much it would cost, and this is how we come up with that formula, and then, a yearly, transfer of money over to the town side. And then it's, and I wrote up top, the 2011 management letter. It was improved segregation of duties in the sewer department. And again, it just speaks to, and again, 2009, 10, 11, and 12. Heath Melanson, the management letter stated virtually the same thing. The sewer department is responsible for collecting customer receipts. One clerk responsible for performing all aspects of customer billing, collections, posting receipts, abatement adjustments, and reconciliation to the town general ledger. They recommend that, again, that the town and the sewer department, they segregate the duties by the collections getting moved to the collector's office. And it's been a reoccurring theme. The 13-16 audits, it's rather a lengthy paragraph, but again, it talks about the sewer department is creating the bills and the collections. And it would be better to move the collection to the collector. The 17 and 18 audits say the same thing. They list it as an internal control deficiency.
So the general theme here is they want the sewer department to bill us for services, yet we send the bill to the collector. So
Well,
is that the gist of it?
what happens is, like I said, the town account, the treasurer, they keep track of like the W-2s, the retirement, everything for the employees of the enterprise fund. And they can charge the enterprise fund for doing those services. And what all these, the audits, well, the 2 audit firms and the financial review from the DOR suggest, instead of one entity creating the bill and collecting the money, the sewer department should create the bill, but when you
Right.
go to pay your sewer bill, instead of going to the sewer department, you should go to the collector, so the same person,
So who generates the W-2s for the sewer department employees?
the accountant here or the treasurer, I forget,
Okay.
whoever the payroll.
Right, so all their benefits are administered through the town.
Through here.
So what is the sewer department's objection for doing this?
Their
Good
objection, I think, is twofold. And it's kind of a big circle. See, last year, there was a town meeting vote on the sewer department budget. And within that budget was amount of money for raises for non-union personnel.
Okay.
And it would be, that money comes from sewer fees, like not
Sure.
from taxation. In the selectmen's budget, there's a line item, 40,000, whatever it is, for cost of living allowance and merit raises, transferable, by the Board of Selectmen and Town Administrator. And somewhere, I think, there's this little riff where the town administrator or the selectmen are saying they have to do, employee evaluations, and they report to the town administrator, for those raises to be processed. The sewer commissioners they're not taxation, they're not from that line item, the selectmen's budget, so we shouldn't have to do that. And in the memorandum in here in option 4, there's also talk of doing, moving billing and sewer employee around and eliminating a clerk and this and that. And I think it's kind of a mess that's gotten kind of out of hand, in my own opinion. And it all boils down to these recommendations from 2 audit companies, and the DOR was basically move sewer collections up here.
So I thought I had heard that the people within the sewer department were not getting their raises because they had not submitted
correct.
the evaluation.
That is correct.
They have not been,
But then you just said that they don't feel like they're part of that.
no, the money that was provided for the raises
Yeah.
was in a separate town meeting article, and that money is to come from sewer fees, the sewer enterprise fund.
Okay, so that was approved in a town article
Town
by town?
meeting, yes,
So that
last
should be
year.
paid,
It's-
but that's passed.
No, I understand what you're saying, but where the money's coming from, but the
Those-
thinking is that they're non-union employees, therefore they're under the purview of the town, so they follow the policy administration for the town.
But where does the money for the
So
raise
everyone
come
else's
from?
raises,
Sewer
so,
fees, if you're a sewer customer and you pay a fee, or if you drop your, you pump
I'm
sewer
sorry, I cut
tanks.
you off, Mike, but,
that's okay.
I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that's confused, but,
Doesn't matter where the money's coming from. That's one of the issues, but,
yeah.
but on the other side of it, the reason for not giving them the raises is that they had not complied with the policy for turning in the employee
Evaluations,
evaluations in a
right.
timely manner. All they need to do is do the employee evaluations,
Well,
and their raise gets paid retroactively to that date.
So if it's a merit raise, you should have something in writing saying that, so-and-so is doing a good job,
I couldn't
blah, blah,
agree with you
blah.
more.
I mean,
I
that's the
think
whole
it's a
purpose of a
solid-
merit raise. Cost of living is just, okay, you get 2%, but,
Is the merit raise a certain amount
But
for each
there again,
employee?
you have
I think so.
elected sewer
I
commissioners.
don't think the amount or where it's
And that's-
coming from
that's
is
part
what's
of
the issue.
the-
It's,
I guess I don't
It's a
understand
fight
what the
between
function of the
who
elected
controls
sewer
the people.
commissioner is.
Well, if you have the
Why do we even need
evaluations,
elected-
like, as an
elected
adjourn,
sewer
you're looking
commissioner?
at, okay, well, that person's doing really well.
I
I
don't
mean,
know
that's,
enough
I don't
about
know
it
how they
to-
do business, that's not really.
They were created per Mass General Law by a town meeting vote way back when. I know the enterprise fund for the water and the sewer department were voted on in 1994, and they were to begin in 1996. And let's see, as soon as I find this town meeting
I mean, I don't know
article.
what it is. I mean, maybe there's a reason to keep the sewer and water separated from the town, essentially from the
Yeah.
oversight or the management. I don't know what it is.
At
but-
one time, the water department was overseen by the Board of Selectmen. There was, Harry Aldridge was the highway superintendent, he was the sewer superintendent, and he was the water superintendent. But the water budget was overseen by the selectmen, and it was one of those deals where, wow, we got this money from the water department, instead of investing it into the water department, and I've just
Yeah.
gone back and looked at history about this whole mess. I wasn't even in town then, but, so it gets into disarray. So around 2000, this move was made to improve the water service, and, you know, new water meters, new this, new that, create a water department, get it away from the selectmen. So money that water customers pay would actually get reinvested back into the system. And it was
Okay.
kind of, you know, swinging the pendulum, you know, you're in the center and you kinda went this way, and then instead of coming back towards the middle, it went boom, way over here, and it's
And
never.
do they, either the water or sewer, have to get anyone's approval to raise rates?
The sewer department.
The electric,
They
I
don't.
know.
There's a committee.
I believe, like, there's an amount that you can go, and if you go beyond that, you have to get approval by the, public utilities of the state. And I think, and again, I would have to look this, shouldn't even say anything, and I believe if you raise them too often, you know,
Yeah.
you have to justify, you know, all of
Okay,
that.
these are the people.
But you have to go to the, Massachusetts.
Right, so
Public
what-
Utilities.
What, I guess, is the issue right now?
The
Is
sewer
it
department.
that
Well-
we're making a recommendation to whether the?
I just wanted, no, I just, like I said, this is gonna be another one of those things that's, we're gonna hear about, and potentially it could be on the warrant in a bylaw change, that we should just be aware of. Like I said, I know Amy was at the selectmen's meeting where they discussed this and the option they were gonna put forth, and, authorize Carter to consult with town council, which, you know, it appears, let's see, I'll get the sewer.
I mean, we're
This is just-
talking about it as a, you know, an agenda item, so we can talk about not only the interplay between the two organizations, but what's being, you have plenty of audits that recommend certain things, right? The Board of Selectmen sent that memorandum that had the 4 different options within it. And it went over like a lead balloon with the sewer commission. They said,
Right, because
we'll take a
again-
look at it when we're ready to look at it at our
Right.
next meeting. So there wasn't any kind of joint come together to talk through it, you know, what the elephant in the room might have been, you know, employee reviews, raises or otherwise. So this whole thing, it's still marching forward. The Board of Selectmen now have said, well, you didn't come, we voted on it, we chose option 4, and we're ready to implement it 1 July.
Who ultimately,
What is that?
is it go to the voters to,
No.
No.
can the Board of Selectmen unilaterally do this?
It would seem so. I was there and I listened to their discussion, and it would seem so. The decision, I mean, it's right, it's public record, it's
Yeah.
the action, the move made by Selectman Haley Brooks, to say that they want the sewer commission to come into compliance. They wanted evidence of that by February 25.
But I don't,
And then they were gonna implement as of July 1. That's what happened. That was the discussion
Yeah.
But
that
see,
happened at that meeting,
my
so.
thought is, you know, come into compliance with what? A suggestion?
No, the movement that she made was that it's going to move, that collections will come here to town hall. The sewer, that's what my interpretation of what the discussion was and what this
So-
says, is that they would do their billing, all collections are gonna come here to town hall, and the idea of the Board of Selectmen is that the sewer commission's gonna say, okay, fine, we'll do what you need, we'll help, we'll work with you to make this happen. There was no discussion of the other issue of the
Right,
raises
yeah,
or
but
all that, it
see,
wasn't
all
about
these
that.
things over the years,
just know it.
they have just been suggestions, no.
Right,
you
but
know,
you're.
the-
But they're
They
material,
want-
Jeff, they're material
suggestions made on-
deficiencies, you know,
Yeah.
page,
In the fact that if you create a bill and you collect a bill, the opportunity for stealing, the juggling the books is there. if you have one person creating a bill and somebody else collecting
Yeah.
it, it's hard to
So
manipulate it.
why don't they address that when the Board of Selectmen asks them to have the discussion?
I
Because
believe
they didn't go.
that the issue is those
I know, I read
non-union
the email.
raises and
Right.
an elected.
So why don't they just comply with writing the
They're-
evaluation?
they-
These are excellent questions.
From the meetings that I've attended, they're elected sewer commissioners, and the
Right.
money does not come from taxation, therefore they don't think the town administrator should
But then that
be
gives them,
overseeing them.
that gives
But they're
them.
not a private
they-
company.
Right, but it gives them the right to, say, the union employees or whatever get a 3% merit
Well,
raise.
Yeah.
I'm just making that number up.
Mhm.
Well, you got a small office there, I'm giving them 7%, because it doesn't come from the taxpayers, it comes from our revenues. There's some inequity there. And I'm not saying that the people that work for the sewer department don't do a great job and aren't worthy of raises or anything like that, and
Mhm.
if, I certainly don't mean to imply that, but
But there again, it would all go to town meeting, and if you say you're giving 7%, town meeting go, whoa, I'll substitute motion for 3%, and that's all we approve. You know, and I think that's kind of town meeting voted a sewer department budget, separate from the town budget, separate from the amount of money that town meeting voted to give merit raises to all the other town employees, light and water. Again, separate, just
so
like
who controls the funds for the raises for the sewer department?
the sewer commissioners,
Then why is it even an issue?
because they won't process them. From what I understand, they won't get processed here in town. You can't make, if you
Yeah.
can't have the town accountant does,
Again, that's a great question. It's like, how much town oversight should Templeton have on the sewer commission? To say that it's zero, I don't think that sounds right. It's not a private entity. If they get sued, it's the town's problem.
Yep.
So how much town oversight is there? At this point, they're not having a voice, like that meeting, choosing option 4, the sewer commission's having zero voice rather than some voice.
well, like I said, he's
It's a fight, it's a mud fight rather than it is administration.
It's 2 elected entities going at it. But like I said, they have listed on the agenda for next Wednesday's meeting,
Yeah,
the chairman of the sewer commissioners.
yeah, they're
Because
keeping
I
it,
think they're gonna, and the meetings that I've gone to, they don't have an objection to moving the collections. Some of it is the talking of billing and reducing, employee and a clerk and da. And part of the conversation last year was, well, can we bill the enterprise fund for, doing the collections? You can. Would that help our general fund? Well, yes, but if you truly wanted to save money, taxpayers already pay taxes to operate the treasurer collector's
Yeah.
office. You're gonna be collecting one more bill for, 1,400 customers? How many more, how much actual
Yeah.
effort? And again,
This
maybe
board-
it gets straightened out next week, with,
yeah,
when the chairman comes and, they come up to some agreement. But it's just something I think
I think
that
they think it's a power grab more than anything else.
with,
Yeah.
and from-
Well, I'm gonna
That's
come
me,
next
I'll
week,
have
so.
Yep.
that's what it is. It's 2 different electric boards, and you have a town meeting vote, and that's the authority over the sewer commissioners, the cemetery commissioners. The cemetery commissioners have the, perpetual care fund, which the town can borrow from. Hey, how much money you got in perpetual care? Well, we got $500,000 in there, or 100,000. Well, we need 30,000 to get a new police cruiser, because we're waiting on the insurance check. The town can borrow from the perpetual care, put the money back, but they gotta put interest in it, and they have to get
And
approval
what's the perpetual care
from
fund?
that's to take care of the cemeteries. You can spend the interest, but not the principal. But that's over the control and oversight of the cemetery commissioners. They're elected to keep track of things like that and stuff.
Well, I think it would be great for these two elected bodies to come to an agreement, and I think that the sewer people should get their raises, and then I think they
And it's
should
not the
really have
first
an honest
time,
discussion about moving.
It's not the
Elections.
first time that this has happened, and a thing about raises has came up before, and but the money was from taxation, not this. But again, this was like 10 years ago, there was a similar dust-up between two elected entities. And it's a little, it's not funny, but my sick little, it's a little comical. that it's-
Childish.
It's like repeating itself 10 years ago, again. But I just,
Okay.
it's something that I think we should be aware of, because one way or another, it could end up, you know,
Take a while.
again, it's finance, you know, possibly spending legal money, this, that,
Well, the way that the Board of Selectmen is putting it out, the cost-saving options is what this board should look at, to say, hey, that's great. These different options have different financial incentives for both the sewer commission, the sewer users, and the town
I just
overall.
get, I look at things a little cynically when they say they're gonna save, cause it's almost they're gonna take money that they're spending down at the sewer department, and they're gonna apply it over here in a different way, so you're actually not,
Yeah.
if you actually wanted to save taxpayer or the ratepayers' money, you would move the collections and don't charge the enterprise fund, because the sewer users are taxpayers, they're already paying taxes to run that office, and if you wanna say you're gonna save the ratepayers and taxpayers' money, then you would just do collections here. You're already providing money for the salaries for the treasurer collector, the assistant treasurer collector, the administrative assistant. It's about 1,400, it's 1,800, less than 2,000, sewer customers, I'm almost positive on that. It's a low number.
Yeah.
You're already providing money for this, so if you wanna save, well, we're gonna save you money by this.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You don't have to do that
I think the
down
sewer
here.
commission could actually do that. I think they could actually
And you're gonna
address some of the,
segregate the
yeah.
collections, as, it's been the
and
primary
preserve
thing,
their
recommendation.
decentralization.
You know, the recommendation is, like, two audit companies and the DOR. Segregate the bill creating and the collections.
Yeah.
You know, the assessors, they send out the bills, you go to pay it, you go see
Right.
the collector.
Now it's this passive-aggressive battle between Kent and Carter.
You know, there's no charge for this, and we're actually gonna save, some money. But now there's talk of, reducing sewer department employees, we're gonna take the clerk, and we're gonna do this, we're gonna save money, health insurance, no, you're not, you're just gonna redirect it.
Yeah.
You already said it, it was already been said, help our general fund out. So you're gonna charge the ratepayers, so you can use that money to pay for costs in the collector's office, and then some of the tax dollars that are going in the collector's office are gonna be applied somewhere else. You ain't saving no money, you're just applying it, putting it in different places. But it's just something that I believe that, this committee should be aware of
Yep.
and up to speed on,
Yeah,
and
I think it's.
like I said, some of this stuff happened, a while back.
I think
It
it's-
is out there electronically, it's just in different places.
When's their next, the 27th they're discussing
Yeah.
it?
They have,
And then the
Chairman
sewer
Mark
commission is
Machete
on the
sewer
4th?
commissioners.
Oh, okay.
It's on the agenda for the 27th, and the biggest thing the next week on the 27th is, the budget, basic, budget introduction, and that's
Mhm.
what them big body, we'll get those, and, he'll go over the draft,
I think
the budget.
that's
I mean,
here,
draft
right?
Warrant, town meeting warrant, what he has, penciled in so far. That's,
Mike, it'll be here
Yeah.
in this room, Jeff.
yes,
Yes.
yes, selectmen's meeting, on the 27th. And I'm gonna,
Probably 6:30. I'm gonna look at the,
post that
Meetings
as a
calendar.
meeting, just in case we wanna. We usually just ask
It's
questions.
6:30.
and It's more of a presentation thing, initial,
yeah.
but,
And they've got Thirsty Turtle, Millstone Lane, Sewer Commission is on there, and the
Yeah.
budget.
yeah, and like I said,
For new
that's the
business.
biggest thing, and then, the upcoming meeting besides that one is, excuse me. Well, would be March 6th for the school committee meeting, if you want to go to that. But the next one that specifically involves
Seventh.
us is the Saturday, March 9th. That all-day thing when all the departments will come in and.
We don't have a
and-
regular meeting on March 7th, or that's gonna get pushed to the 9th? I'm just,
That
I'm
is not
just
up-
asking.
That is not up to me, that's up to you all. Do you want to have a meeting on the 7th?
Based off of what you said about the meeting minutes needed to be approved in a certain time frame, don't we have to have a meeting, at least to approve the meeting
We
minutes?
could do a short meeting.
I mean, it could be a 5-minute meeting.
Yeah, I mean, we could do it on the 7th.
Yeah.
Couldn't you do it
We could do it at,
you could call a meeting to order on the 9th and just approve or
we
dis.
could do it on the
He said
9th.
30 days, I think the 7th would be 28, so the 9th would be exactly 30, so, yeah, whatever works.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, I would recommend not having a meeting on the 7th.
If we're gonna do that
makes
night,
my
yeah.
schedule easier.
I mean, if we, for minutes, actually, we could post a meeting to meet here on the 27th at 6 o'clock, 6:15, and do the minutes, and that would be
Yep.
that. But, like I said, the 7th, a regular meeting, that's up to you all, if you all wanna have that, or you wanna wait till the 9th,
I think the 9th,
till we
the
get.
9th is gonna be a busy day.
I mean, we're gonna
Yeah,
hear
it's gonna be
get the
busy.
initial stuff, here it is, go home, read it, look at it, for the 9th. On the 7th, I don't know. What would happen. But, as far as meetings, like I said, the selectmen's on the 27th. March 6th,
Well, if we're getting all that information next week, which unfortunately I won't be able to attend, I'll be out of state, but, if people are gonna be reading through that, would it make sense to meet on the 7th, just to discuss anything in lieu of the meeting on the 9th? Again, just
yeah.
just the
that's,
fraud, but.
It's already scheduled.
There might be a lot of questions that I certainly could have reading through it, like, before the meeting of the night, I'd kinda like to know the answer to those things. Maybe not, but again, just a thought.
So, I said selectmen's meeting on the 27th, where they'll do the budget presentation.
Yep.
March 6th is school committee scheduled for their final vote. Potential regular advisory meeting on the 7th, and then on 9th, on the Saturday, is that
School
wonderful
committee
thing
holiday.
that'll.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong month.
Yeah,
No,
that's,
I
well,
didn't see one there either.
The school
hard to say
committee.
how long that'll take, but
I think it just says Board of Selectmen.
some
See,
departments,
next
their
Wednesday
budgets
there
are
was a
quicker,
meeting.
some are a little longer, it all depends. But you have everything
Does the school committee
outlined
have
in
a
front of you.
calendar?
I think it's on there. Sorry, excuse me. I think it's on there. Yeah.
So March 7th, yay, nay, maybe?
Sure.
I'll try to be here.
I can be.
What was the question?
March 7th.
Yeah,
March 7th is a regular
yeah,
meeting
that's
for
fine.
us, I mean.
Yeah, I can be.
I'm good. I'm good with that.
So I figure if the agenda's approval of, the previous 2 meeting minutes,
Minutes.
and then just any Q and A about stuff for the 9th, again, it could end up being a 5-minute meeting, but.
Right.
Yeah, there might be some, some things we can,
Yeah,
yeah.
Can we spend it with Thirsty Trail?
but that way all of our business will be
Oh,
taken care of
yeah.
before the 9th.
There we go.
1/12th,
School committee meeting calendar.
School budget, I'll pass that out. Okay.
When was the new website supposed to get rolled out? The Templeton website, wasn't that supposed to be
Yeah,
soon?
I think that's still a work in progress. I know it was supposed to be soon. I saw something about it, but I don't know where it's at now. Sometime it's like listed on the list and then it'll disappear and then it shows up.
Yeah, March,
Those
March
guys,
6th.
they have a nice website.
March 6th, budget hearing and meeting. It's at the Kiva at 6 o'clock.
What's the key?
Is that built, it's where you went before, right? Wasn't
We
it
were in
the
the
Kiva?
library.
Oh,
So for the 7th, minutes, 2 sets of minutes, and potential questions or stuff for the budget meeting on the 9th.
Yep.
And,
I sent out the minutes.
and if anything
Yeah,
comes
couple
out of,
things.
Yeah.
if anything else comes out of the 27th, but
I'll be there.
and that is the end of the agenda, unless anyone has anything else. But the school thing is gonna be something, I think that should be worked on and put out, cause it's, yeah.
You know, I
again,
think
it's-
one last thing on that is a credit to them, they're definitely on the low end of the numbers that they gave us initially, of the options of potential,
Yeah,
so.
that
so-
2.9 would've been a real,
Yeah,
that was,
that would've been a non-starter.
everybody
Big
was
jump.
looking at that going, I even talked to some of the school committee members, not at that last meeting, but at a prior one, and, at the all boards, and they were like, what the? I mean, even for them, they, and they realized it was, a big jump, and they did move, they added that 6th option, and they've even bumped it down a little
Yeah.
bit, so maybe on the final one, it bumped down a little bit more, but anything is possible, to a nice round million. So, if there's nothing,
Yeah, I make a motion to adjourn for the evening.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay.